All right, guys, so we are wrapping up this unit and chapter 30. So for this PowerPoint, you're going to go ahead and write down everything in the red in your notes. That way you have all the important information to study for your test this week. We are wrapping up World War II. War is going to be over soon, and we are going to have victory for the Allies on both fronts. All right, peace is over. All right, so what causes kind of this downfall of Hitler is you have his invasion of the Soviet Union. So if you remember, they had a pact, him and Stalin had a Nazi-Soviet pact where they would both take over half of Poland. Hitler decides to go against this in 1941, and he is going to send 3 million soldiers to blitzkrieg the Soviets. They are unprepared, and Germans gain a lot of territory. But Hitler makes the same mistake as Napoleon did in the past. Early December, temperatures in Russia or Soviet Union are like negative 40 degrees, and thousands of Germans freeze to death. Maybe he should have learned history. In the early days of war, so U.S. Congress on the other side of the ocean, they declared neutrality. So we did the same exact thing in World War I, if you can remember. Like, nope, we're staying out of it. We're going to do cash and carry. We're going to do a Lend-Lease Act. Same thing's happening right now in World War II. And you should know from our notes from last week, there's a certain event that makes us jump right into the war. And that event is Pearl Harbor. So December 7th, 1941, Japanese bomb Pearl Harbor, killing 2,400 people. And then Franklin Roosevelt asked Congress to declare war. They vote on it. We go to war within 4 days. All right, and then we talked about the Manhattan Project as well last week, where they start working on the atom bomb with Albert Einstein. All right, we're going back across the ocean to North Africa. So we know that you had desert foxes, and Italy and Hitler's allies are trying to take over land in North Africa. Well, by 1942, you have Dwight Eisenhower, who is not president yet. He's just a general in the military. But this is going to help, promote him to be president and what makes people want to vote for him to be president. He takes command in Morocco and Algeria over here, Morocco, Algeria, and he's going to trap Rommel's army, forcing them to surrender 1943. So he does a good job here with his military leadership. D-Day. So D-Day is probably one of the most infamous days of the World War II. This is when you have the Allies, so the United States, Britain, they're going to invade occupied France on June 6, 1944. At dawn, they're going to have thousands of ships holding about 156,000 troops come across the English Channel, so kind of right where Dunkirk happened, a little lower down because it's another beach, Omaha Beach in Normandy. And they were underwater mines. So yes, we lost a lot of lives, but this was a very successful breakthrough against German defenses because they were coming from Normandy Beach, but then they had other troops coming from the south of France, and they, had the Germans surrounded. And then by 1944 in August, so only a few months later, they were able to enter into Paris and liberate Paris and free France from the Germans. So D-Day, very important day in World War II history. Yalta Conference. So this is the big three. Roosevelt is still president. Churchill, who is the prime minister of Britain, and Stalin, he is the leader of the Soviet Union. They're going to meet at Yalta in the Soviet Union and plan their strategy before the war ended. They're like, okay, what are we going to do with Germany once the war ends? Because they're like, they know they're doing a good job right now, but it's not official that they've won yet. So eventually, after the war, they're going to divide Germany into 4 zones and give each of these places a zone to control in Germany. But Yalta Conference, Roosevelt, Churchill, Stalin. VE Day, so Victory in Europe. That's what the VE stands for, Victory in Europe Day. You have all over Europe, the Axis troops, they're beginning to surrender. We're going into the countries, liberating these countries, liberating concentration camps. So troops are making their way closer to Berlin, and this is where Hitler is stationed at, and Hitler commits suicide. So in his underground bunker on May 7th, 1945, and once the Nazis in Germany hear of that, they surrender. So VE Day was Victory in Europe, and this is May 8th, 1945. You have the Potsdam Conference. All right, so big three, but it's changed because Roosevelt is no longer president. Truman is now president. So the only person that stays the same is Stalin. He's up there in the corner. So you have Truman, and then you have Attlee, who is Prime Minister of Britain. And they are going to continue to finalize plans for the war. So this is after the official surrender of the Germans. They are going to, talk about it. But Truman keeps a secret that he is planning to drop this atomic bomb on Japan. So no one knows that's going to happen. Japan hasn't officially surrendered yet. Only the Europe side of the war is finished that May 1945. And then we have VJ Day, which we talked about last week when we talked about a war in the Pacific. This comes in August. So we know the first bomb, August 6th, second bomb on Nagasaki, August 9th, and then the Emperor is going to surrender August 10th. So VJ Day is celebrated when the official surrender documents were signed on September 2nd, 1945. So war in Europe ends in May. War in the Pacific ends in September officially. Not